Satnam, my name is Harinam Singh Khalsa, and so glad to be spending this time with you. And as the title suggests, which is how the wise one prepares for an uncertain world ahead. I think it's good to start with just what do I mean by wise one or wisdom. So, there's a lot of intelligence in the world, but maybe not so much wisdom. So, wisdom really is a state of consciousness where we would call it like applied intelligence. So, in other words, you may know about many things, but how do you actually apply them to day-to-day life? So, you can be living peaceful, fulfilled, successful life. So that's what we'll be exploring today is how a person of this consciousness, a person who has applied intelligence, can prepare for uncertainty. So this has been a pretty interesting time we've been going through, and actually, in spite of the title of the course, I think it can be said that this has been a world history of uncertainty. Personally, I've been taking this free time that I've had the last couple of months to just go back, do a lot of reading, history and politics and scripture, all kinds of things. And also even speaking with friends of mine from my childhood and kind of reminiscing over the decades that have passed. And actually, I think it's fair to say that there's no such thing as certain times, that since the beginning of the world, nobody could say for sure what would happen in any given day. And even last night I'm watching the opera. I mean, go on and on. Basically, we've never lived in a totally certain world. But granted, this time appears to be particularly uncertain compared to maybe other periods of our time. Certainly, there's a lot of political unrest that's all over the world that's making people uneasy and uncertain about what's ahead. And then, of course, now we're in the middle of this pandemic, this global pandemic. And people have lost their jobs, and nobody's quite sure what the future holds. Myself, I've been taking this time actually to take a pause, because I would acknowledge that more than at some points of my own 68 years on this planet. I don't know for sure what's around the corner after all of this thing settles down and the dust settles. Nobody knows for sure how things are going to be, even more so than usual. So, it's really, for me, it's a time to kind of pause and not make any plans, because I don't know exactly how the world is going to be, but I do feel that the last 30, 40 years of my spiritual practice have really prepared me for what's ahead. And I'd like to share that with you today, what I think those tools are, and try to kind of keep it simple. And I think one term that I'll introduce here is paradox, because if you've been practicing many years on the spiritual path and just the path of personal development, and your consciousness becomes a little more sophisticated, you'll actually experience something that's very hard to explain logically, and that is how two opposite things can be true and happening both at the same moment, because the mind has a tendency to try to compare or see things in terms of black and white, or try to contrast things. And paradox is none of those things. It's actually two diametrically opposed things happening and being equally true at the same time. I think as your consciousness gets developed through practice over a long amount of time, you'll just have a wider view of what's happening, and I would call that the world of paradox. And so we'll be exploring that today, because I think that the way that the wise person prepares for an uncertain future, an uncertain world, in the end, is really that person's ability to master two completely opposite, skills, because just one of them is not going to do. You'd actually need to do both. And it'll be some of your job to actually do that. I think today I really just kind of want to just draw you a map of what it would look like, so that there's a little more clarity about this. So the paradox here really is that really what you need to master is, at the same time, you have to really have stability, and to really kind of be who you are, and be something that's going to carry yourself through, no matter the ups and downs. You're always going to be that same person, okay? And then the other side of the paradox is that even though you need stability, you also can't be rigid. You need to be the most flexible person. So this is kind of interesting. How do you become the most stable and yet the most flexible person at the same time? And if you're able to master that, actually, you'll have no trouble being prepared for the times that come, these uncertain times, and you're going to be of great guidance and inspiration to everyone around you, because, frankly, there's not a lot of role models. Most people aren't actually particularly evolved in either of these areas, but if they actually get to meet a person like you, who is actually very stable and very flexible at the same time, which may come off as kind of confusing to other people, but actually it's quite impressive. You're gonna be very prepared yourself, and you're going to be very helpful to those around you in giving them a role model on how to do that. So let's first talk about the stability part, because the stability part is the part that is going to give you strength, and that's an absolutely essential component to this. To be prepared for the uncertainty that is ahead, to be prepared for possible adversity, possible shock, or possibility of being rained gifts upon you. No matter, just to prepare yourself, you need to be strong. And you can see from my appearance, I got a turban and a beard, and the reason I have this is that I'm Sikh, and a Khalsa Sikh actually, and on this particular path, strength is actually very, very highly valued, because it gets you through a lot of things. And if people are not strong when they're faced with adversity or uncertainty, they'll collapse. And it takes a while to build this, but we would say you need a strong core. You got to know who you are, and you got to be consistent. And there's ways of doing it. And I'll just, again, the way to master this, you'll be on your own. That's not going to happen in 1 hour. But I really want to maybe even remind you of what you even know of, what, especially from my background, what are the components of a person who has a strong core. and what are the aspects of your life you really have to solidify to be a person who's really solid, has a strong core, is strong through everything. And right at the top of the list, words that are very important in my life and I think in the lives of many successful people is self-discipline and commitment. They're not exactly the same thing, but they do work together. Self-discipline is your ability to basically train your mind and your body to do what you want it to do instead of them, them being in control of things. And so you have to develop a strong mind and a strong body, and it takes time. And you do that with self-discipline by creating healthy habits and keeping to them. For instance, in my own life, it's taken years to do this, but I trained my mind to the point that, I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to do my daily spiritual practice. I don't even need an alarm clock to do that. And 2.5 hours, I do that, and then I train myself. Okay, after that, I go to the gym every day, or at least 6 days a week, and train my body to. I'm 68 now, and I have to discipline my mind and my body so that I treat it well. So I have a morning practice. I do that every day. I go to the gym religiously, and I've done that for decades. I have to be disciplined in the food that I eat so that I nourish my body. So try to get to bed at a certain time. So these are basically healthy habits that I have trained my mind and my body to follow what I would like it to do. And to me, in my experience, all successful people in all areas of life are self-disciplined, and it's something that you can always go back. I keep getting back to your core is something that no matter what happens, the good times, the bad times, the adversity, the tragedies, you lose your job, you win the lottery, you always go back to this core to define who you are, and self-discipline is definitely an important aspect of that, and if you don't have it, you're going to have to learn it, because it's just very hard to make it through unless you've learned how to train your mind and body to do what you would like it to do. Commitment's kind of related to that, and if you're a commitment person, you have to be self-disciplined, so they kind of play off of each other. But commitment is similar but a little different. Commitment is more about your worldview and your perspective, that your world is based on certain promises that you make, and it's based on your commitment is basically that your world and your life is based on your word, and that commitment simply is that you do what you say you're going to do. So self-discipline's kind of tied into that, but commitment's actually kind of a bigger concept, a bigger virtue, because you can actually be very self-disciplined and not particularly committed in every aspect of your life. But a committed person is a person who lives by their word and will die by their word. And again, when everything is going crazy around you and there's uncertainty, you can always go back to your word. And basically there's three types of, I'm a very commitment person, so I've really experienced and studied this in depth. And commitment, there's three types of commitment basically. Are decisions, which are commitments you make to yourself. I'm going to go to law school, I'm going to go on a diet, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. There's this, I'm going to move to Paris this year. Those are commitments that you're giving your word to yourself that you're going to do something. So those I would call decisions. And then the next kind of commitment is something I'd call a promise, and that is you're giving your word to another human being that you're going to do something, and you say it in a way that in their mind, if you promise it, it's done, so they can count on you. And really that's keeping promises to other people is really the basis of trust. And then the third kind of commitment is something we would call a vow, and vow is actually a commitment that's made to God. And so there's not a lot of vows because it's kind of a higher order thing. But examples of vows are like marriages. Because really in a marriage, you're not giving a promise to another person. Technically, I know these days that's more so. But traditionally, a marriage vow is made to God, not to another person. So that's makes it a little tougher to break. And there are religious vows that you're choosing one particular spiritual path to bring you to your destiny, and that's between you and your Creator. So I guess the point is that if you develop yourself that you're highly self-disciplined, and it takes a while to train yourself, just get into habits and just stop being a lazy person, and just train your mind and body to do what you'd like it to do. And in addition, that you develop yourself where you're a person of your word, and your word is unbreakable, and you'd give your life before breaking your word to yourself, to others, and to your Creator. This is going to give you this ability to get through almost anything, because it doesn't matter what's happening, it still comes back to the fact that you've created the ability to discipline yourself and to live and die by your word no matter what. And so that takes you through quite a bit. A couple of other things I would mention that would really strengthen your core, because this one half of it, as far as getting you through uncertain times. And I would call this simply faith, and which is very, very important, because when I say faith, I'm really describing your belief in something that's bigger than yourself and permanent. So, for instance, again, I'm just accessing my own personal life. I'm a very committed Sikh. I've given my life to this spiritual path, and it has ultimately, the purpose of that is to connect me 24/7 to my Creator. So I'm very unabashedly, I know that a lot of people don't like the word, but I'm very unabashedly a God person. So to me, unabashedly, I share with people that at the end of the day, it's always about God. And so, even I've been reading this in the scriptures this past couple of weeks, and it's had a very strong pressure on me during all of this uncertainty with the virus and whatnot, is that at the end of the day, God was there in the beginning, God was there now, no matter what happens, it's not like my relationship with God is ever going to change. It's always going to be very solid, and it's always going to be the compass. And so, how do you prepare yourself for uncertain times? One reason is knowing that there are things, and this really gives great peace and strength, is that there are things in your life that it doesn't matter how things change. It doesn't matter whether you're super successful, you learn unexpectedly, you have cancer, you learn unexpectedly that a parent or a best friend has died, you've lost your job, who knows you got the coronavirus, or it's very good news. No matter what the news is, one thing is constant, and that is that God is constant. Or whatever else you have faith in. I'm not, trying to push a particular point of view on you, but it's very good that there's something that's always your North Star. And if you have that, then it's much, much easier to navigate through these difficult times. The last thing that I would share, as far as, again, giving you strength and solidity and a core to prepare you for whatever happens, no matter how certain or uncertain, is another very important word in my vocabulary, and that is mission. And another time maybe I can give a whole course in just mission, so I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. But what I do want to say about mission is I first kind of want to define it for you from my perspective. And from my perspective, a mission, you are a mission-oriented person if you are ready, willing, and able to dedicate your entire life to the purpose that God put you on this planet to achieve. And to do that, you'd have to be a really very conscious person, because you would really have to understand what are your core talents, what were your God-given talents, not what you'd like to be good at, I mean what you're really good at, that everybody knows you're really good at. And so what are your, put together your core talents, your God-given talents, put together that with the things that really give you passion, what really turn you on, things you do for nothing because you love to do them so much. And then also be very aware of what your core value system is. And so I'm not even suggesting what your core value system should be. That's a very personal thing. But everybody has like a short list. I mean, you may have many, many values, but every person really has these core values, a very short list, 1, 2, 3 things that are more important than anything to them. And like, for instance, in my case, I would say my core value is commitment. Maybe for another person, it's kindness or charity or whatever. But yeah, you really do have to be clear about what you value most in this short life. So between your core values, the core passions, and really your God-given abilities, if you can kind of have clarity about those things and put them together and put them in a direction where all 3 of those aspects of your life are well served towards, in some way or the other, serving humanity, and in whatever capacity that may be. That's what a mission would be. And then also along with that, that it's not a negotiation, that whatever the mission is asking of you to fulfill that, you will be ready, willing, and able to sacrifice whatever you need to make that happen. So that's kind of the difference between a mission, let's say, something that's simply for profit. So again, it'll be for you to kind of work this out. It's hard for me to do this in just 1 hour, but I do want to share with you the components. So again, one half of the equation on how to face an uncertain future is for you to be rock solid. And so you'll be in the same person, no matter what happens, you're going to be okay, because you know who you are. And what you are is, you're a person who can discipline themselves to do what you need to do. You're a person who's commitment oriented, that no matter what's happening, you're going to come through in what you promised to come through at. And that you're a person of faith, that there's something that exists in this life, in this world, that's bigger than life itself, and that will be constant, and that finally, if you're very, very, not just it's an intellectual concept, if you're absolutely certain about what you were put here to do, which is called your mission, why you were sent here, then you have missions. So between self-discipline, commitment, faith, and mission, you are, if you are very highly evolved in those aspects of life, you are rock solid. Nothing is going to defeat you, and it doesn't matter how uncertain the future is, you're going to be there to deliver that. And there are things that are constant, and I'll just mention one thing from the Sikh background. It's one teaching of the founder of our faith, Guru Nanak, and he taught Ad Sach Jugat Sach Hebi Sach Nanaka Hosi Bi Sach, which basically says, Nanak is saying, what was the truth in the beginning of creation, that truth has always been true throughout all the ages, and that same truth is true in this very moment, and that truth will never change. And so if you're very connected with that ultimate truth, it doesn't matter how uncertain worldly life is, which is not going to last anyhow. And even after that life, whatever is true will always be true. And so the point is that that constant presence in your life of truth, commitment, faith, mission, that's one half of what will carry you through. I'll share a meditation here for you, and this is a meditation for an absolute. It's called it's from the Kundalini Yoga tradition, and it's the meditation that's called the meditation for absolutely powerful energy. And I'll just demonstrate this for you. And actually, you can just chant this 5 times, and it will have an effect. But if you could do it like 11 minutes or 31 minutes, so much the better. And what we do is we interlace our fingers like so. And interlace, and then you'll see my right thumb is on top. So I'm interlacing fingers with the right thumb up top, and then just the ring finger, okay, just like that. See that? Those ring fingers are together and out, and everything else is interlaced with the right thumb. And I'm putting this just like so, okay, in front of my heart. And what we'll do is we're going to just chant Om. O, like in English, like O-N-G, Om. Not Om, not like A-U-M or O-M, like it's traditionally done in Hatha Yoga and in the Hindu tradition. Instead of Om, we chant Om, O-N-G. So why don't you just do this with me 5 times, and even 5 times has an effect of giving you this energy. And again, the more you practice it, the more you'll feel this, and that's what you'll need. You'll need going forward strength, and that's what we've talked to up to this point: being stable, having a strong core, and experiencing this infinite, invincible strength. Okay, so inhale. Okay, inhale and exhale. Great. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the other half of the equation, and that is flexibility. Because if you're just committed and have self-discipline, really, really strong, that's great. I relate to it. I'm that kind of person myself. But if you're just that and nothing else, you're going to find that you're a bit rigid, and you're not going to be able to respond or adapt to things very quickly. And when we're entering an uncertain world, as we are, and even if we weren't entering a very uncertain world, things can happen very quickly. Like, boom, just like that. And if you're just very strong, that's great, but you also have to kind of, as we say, go with the flow. And even as you're being very strong and very committed, you have to have the ability to be very adaptable and very spontaneous. And that's a whole other, that's what we're talking about, this paradox, because the strength part of it is like, okay, holding your ground, but you also have to have the consciousness where you can just kind of go with things and flow with them without giving up your core. That's really advanced consciousness. So let me talk about some of the things that are key in that area. So what would be very key in that area is for you to firstly develop your intuition. And let me talk about what that word means to me, because it's a word that's thrown around a lot. And I actually think what people are calling intuition often is not their intuition. It's really something else, and they think it's their intuition, and it kind of sometimes gets, you know, they think like following their heart is their intuition, and sometimes that gets them in a little trouble because their hearts maybe tricking them, and they're trying to convince themselves that it's their intuition to try to validate their heart. But maybe it's not that. But intuition does exist. So just very briefly, I would say what, from my experience, intuition is not, okay? And intuition is not an idea or thought. Like sometimes people go, oh, I just had this like immediate thought. Well, that's not intuition, that's an immediate thought. And people can get fooled because something that's intuitive is not an idea. Okay? And neither is it an emotional feeling, any kind of feeling. And again, a lot of times people have like a very strong emotional feeling, like they'll see somebody, oh, that was, they have this really strong, like, romantic feeling, and they're saying it's their intuition that that's Mr. Right or not Mr. Right. That's fine. Okay, I'm not criticizing being romantic, but that's not exactly intuition, because intuition is neither a thought nor a feeling. It's its own thing. Intuition is more like a spontaneous knowing. You just know. But it doesn't involve an intellectual knowing or an emotional knowing. It's just, you just know, and it's just like that. And it really is highlighted by its spontaneity, but it's not the same as being impulsive, which is really being directed by other things in the background. But again, this is not a whole course about intuition, but I just want to point out that a highly developed person has a highly developed intuitiveness to them, and it is something you're born with that a lot of times that you're not paying attention to, because it's kind of very, very subtle, very subtle. But and there's so much noise going on intellectually and emotionally that it's hard to perceive that subtle wisdom just going, that's how it is. And you really need to not only develop that, what I would call spontaneous knowledge, but you have to trust it, because it's never actually wrong. It's one thing that's different than your head and your heart. Your intuition actually is never wrong. So if you say, like, for instance, oh, my intuition told me, but it landed up that my intuition was wrong, that's not actually, that's not your intuition, because your intuition is not capable of being wrong, because everything we have been given from God from the time we were born are everything we've needed for our success and our liberation. And so there's a reason we have an intuition, and the reason we have an intuition is that intuition is the one thing that we were born with that is a reliable source for making decisions. So intuition, really, the purpose of having an intuition, the reason it's in your DNA, is that it's really the equipment given to you to make decisions. And I can speak from personal experience. I never make any kind of important decision in my life based on how I'm feeling, what I'm thinking, anything like that, or some emotional or psychological need. Never. I always make the decisions in my life based on this immediate knowing that it's there. You have to develop it, or at least you have to kind of uncover the source of it that's been kind of covered over through your life, and rediscover it. But it's not just enough to have that intuition. You have to trust it enough, and there's reason to trust it, because it's never wrong. Trust it enough that if the intuition says to you go, you go. If the intuition says stay, stay. And don't play it through your head, because once you start playing it through your head and your heart, you're trying to kind of confirm what your emotions or your psychology is wanting and needing from you, so you'll start negotiating it. But I never do. I never negotiate or second think what my intuition is telling me. If the intuition says it, that's good enough for me, and I will live with that. So if you're able to do that, if you're able to develop your intuition, you will have the ability to just be like right in the moment, just turn right on a dime, be a very spontaneous person. And coming into any kind of uncertainty in the world, you may have to make life and death decisions right in the moment. A lot of times you'll want like time to think about it, but you don't have time to think about it. A lot of times you're going to actually have to make a move like just like that. And you'll be able to do it if your intuition is very developed. You can recognize it and you will trust it so much that basically you're willing to live and die for it because you trust it that much. So that is something that you'll have to develop to be on the second part of this paradox, far as being very flexible. You know, you're not going to be able to be flexible unless you have a highly developed intuition, can recognize it immediately, have the willingness to act on it without any hesitation and any remorse. So that's one piece. I'm looking at little notes here. Normally I don't do that. But, what else? Okay, the second thing is thinking out of the box. All right, and that'll make you a very flexible person. And my experience with my own life and observing other people is how few people really are able to think out of the box. They kind of train with a very kind of limited response system. Something is a certain way, this is what they do. They do this, they do that. They do this. So that's kind of more in the other half of the paradigm, in that, you know, there are things in your life that are very dependable, predictable, and give you some comfort. But what it does is it also limits your opportunities, because in every situation you actually have many options. But what is the right option? So if you kind of, everything is black and white, or you do things a certain way over and over again and replicate it over and over again, you're missing out on all the other opportunities. I have really felt, and I was not this kind of person when I was younger, but I definitely would call myself a person who thinks way, way out of the box, and people tell me that, so enough people have told me that I'm going, okay, there's no reason to think that that's not true. And I've been trying to, over the years, kind of understand what exactly that means, or how I got to the point of thinking out of the box. And I think the way for me the best to explain it is that it's kind of two things. First of all, it's your ability to see not be so blinded that you just see what's ahead of you, which is kind of more in the first half of the paradox. This is like, even though you can have a very clear sense of your identity and your belief systems, etc., you have to have, not have these blinders on, like if you've seen the horses in the horse races, they've got these blinders. You got to have the blinders off so you can see everything at the same time. Like, for instance, I was, before this pandemic, I'm a big music fan, jazz fan, opera, things like that, where involves a lot of people. And, I was listening to this opera, and there was 40 different musicians. There's, 30 different singers. There's all this stuff going on. And there's a story going on, and there's a lighting going on, and there's costumes going on. And I was saying to myself, wow, I don't know how I got there, but I can actually hear it all together, and I can also see it all happening at the same time. Or I'm a big sports fan too, so I'm a big American football fan, for example. No apologies for that, and I love going to the games. And one of the great things about going to the games is, unlike on television, you can see all the players at the same time. And I got to the point that I can actually see all 22 players doing their thing all at the same time, which is another way. Most people are just like following the ball, which is really kind of a example of what people do in life. They're focused on one thing, but they're missing everything else going around them. So it's another way of seeing it where you can see all the 22 people all at the same time. And even if I'm, let's say, talking to somebody in a restaurant, even if I'm very concentrating on the conversation, I've kind of gotten the ability now where I can actually be connected and have attention to every single person sitting in the restaurant, the waiters, the cooks, the people at the other table, and the person sitting in front of me all at the same time, because everything is actually connected. So I think thinking out of the box really requires, well, one thing it requires is your ability to see everything so you can see how everything is connected. So again, it really helps prepare you to be spontaneous, especially during time of great uncertainty, because you can still see how everything is connected. But to do that, you'd have to see everything, how everything fits together. And if there's a change in one thing in the chain, you kind of see where you fit in there, and then you make the adjustment you have to make. The other thing I would suggest that I learned thinking out of the box is that instead of focusing on just the obvious, which is the next step, without losing your attention to that, never lose track of the end game. So if you see the end game, you can kind of work yourself back, which means that sometimes I do things that people don't agree with this, and I actually was taught differently than I was a child. And I remember when I was a child, they always would say that the ends have to justify the means, which it basically means that if you get something, you have to do it a certain way, the right way. But now I'm a little out of the box, and I'm willing to do very unconventional things because I'm so aware of what the end objective is. I'm more open to getting to that objective by whatever is available, whatever means are available to me, even if you wouldn't call them conventional. So, but in the end, it's about thinking out of the box. So, again, the tools of being flexible, intuition, thinking out of the box, and then I'll return again to this whole thing, this God thing. And you hear this said a lot, but as I'm getting older, I can see really how true this is. And there's an expression, let go and let God. Let go and let God. And boy, is that true. Because again, you're in an unfamiliar place. You may be in a vulnerable place. You may be in a scary place. But it still comes down to the end. You think you're covered. That's it. I'm using the word God. You can use whatever word you want. Again, I'm not pushing anything anybody other than like an attitude, and the attitude is everything's fine. Everything's going to be fine, and everything is going to be, in the end, everything's going to be fine. For me, is another way of saying let go and let God. Just dropping this very strong habit that you have really since the beginning, that almost everybody has, is that whether you admit it or not, you kind of think you're in control of the situation. And I'm a lawyer too, so I always say is when there's very little evidence to support that you're the one in control, because you're in control of yourself. I totally agree with that. I'm a very, it's called responsibility. I'm a very responsible for a person, and this is one thing I have control over, and that is my own self, and that's not insignificant, but I certainly don't have absolute control of, nor do I want it of the people around me or the planet, or there's all kinds of things that are out of control. But in some, there's an orchestra leader, as I would say, and God's got it covered. And I mean, I'm not here by accident. Very strong conviction that I'm just not a haphazard event in nature, and I hope you don't feel that way about yourself. I hope you understand that you were sent here for a reason. So whatever force, whatever you choose to call it, sent you here, that's got you covered. There's no way that you were sent here for no reason and then you're not covered. Whatever sent you here has you covered. And I'm not getting into a big philosophical point about it, because I'm more talking about just how you perceive reality. But if your faith is strong and you just take a deep breath, you realize that it's all covered. From the time you were born, you haven't missed one heartbeat or one breath, and I think that's indisputably true. And it's not like you consciously have made it that way. It was taken care of. You've had, because you're still here, because you're hearing this presentation today, it's confirmed that you've always had food to eat, you've had shelter, you've had enough shelter, you've had enough food, your heart is still beating, your breath is still breathing until it's not, and then you'll still be covered. So, that's kind of like the beginning of really understanding non-attachment, in that you're just happy to be the person that you were sent here to be. And so, again, just kind of keeping it simple, I just like to share with you that, from my own experience, that in this area, this other half of the paradigm of, okay, we first talked about being very solid and strong. Now we're talking about being very flexible and adaptable. And again, I just think the keys to doing that are really learning how to be a person who is strong in the area of intuition, is willing to trust it, that you develop kind of this very, very broad worldview that allows you to experience and to observe how everything is connected, and seeing how you're fitting in with that, okay? And that's going to make you very flexible, because that actually changes every moment. And if you see how it works, you'll see where you fit in, and you'll make the adjustments. So, so it's intuition, it's thinking out of the box, and then there's this last one where, just let go of trying to be in control. It's going to hold you back from the possibilities. You want. There's an expression: you want what you want, and God wants what God wants, and in the end, you lose, because you don't get a vote. Actually, that's a war you can't win. And you think you know what you want, but the force that sent you here knows what you need. And so if you can accept that, then it's going to just make you a more flexible, spontaneous person, where you can really kind of go with the flow. And so those are the two things you need. You need to be absolutely solid, and also be like the perfect example of going with the flow, both at the same time. And if you can do this, I can absolutely guarantee you that you will be the wise one. That's what wisdom is. In the end, a wise person is a person who has mastered strength and flexibility both at the same time, and that makes you a great yogi, obviously. So I'll end the presentation today with meditation. Actually, I was going to do a few minutes ago, but I'll end the class with this way. In the world of Kundalini Yoga, we actually have been given many meditations specifically for really developing and enhancing our intuition, okay? And there's many of them, but I'll share with you the one that I personally like the best and has been very, very helpful to me. And when I was a young man, I'm 68 now, but I actually started practicing this meditation when I was 24, and I couldn't believe how it gave me really an insight into things that I didn't understand before. And then over the years, I developed that more, and now I trust that experience very much. So we call this the triple heartbeat meditation, okay? So, and I'll just show this to you, but we'll do it together for a minute or two, and then you can practice it at home, okay? And I really like to do, now if you really got time in your hands, 2.5 hours is like, that's the max. But I think that if you can do it for like 31 minutes, that would be very excellent. Okay, so it's 3 things. Okay, one is you've probably seen this, and you don't see all of me here because you just see on the top of my body, but you're probably, most of the people here have seen yogis sit in cross-legged position or lotus. So you normally would sit in like a yogic sitting position with your ankles crossed, and then you've seen this too, with the 3 fingers up and then my thumb and index finger together, lightly touching. That's called Gyan Mudra. That's the hand lock for wisdom and knowledge. And what you want to do, the key to this meditation actually, is touching your thumb and your index finger, the fleshy part of them, so lightly that you can hear your heartbeat. Or not here, you can actually feel your heartbeat in your fingers. And to do that, actually, if you press too hard, you can't feel them. So it's actually touching them so lightly that you can feel your heartbeat at this point, okay? That's really the secret to making this meditation work, because what you're really trying to develop in this meditation is your ability to perceive subtleties. Because that's really the key to intuition, is really be able to perceive the subtleties within all the noise that's going on around in every other window of perception that you have. So, got that. That's one. The second is, can't see because my beard and my mustache are hiding, but what I'm doing is I'm putting my front teeth together, lightly touching. Like, I'm not overlapping my teeth, I'm lightly touching these front teeth, and then my lips are shut. Okay, just like this, very lightly, lips are shut. And then take the tip of your tongue, and you can't see this, but take the tip of your tongue and roll it up so it's pushing up the top of your palate, top of your mouth, towards your 7th chakra, the gate up over here, where you're actually pushing it up. So one, touching lightly, like that, and then you're going to put your wrists on your knees. My knees are out of the video here. You're going to have your eyes shut, keeping your attention in your third eye, and again, all you're going to do is lightly touch these teeth together, close your lips, okay, tip of your tongue, and push it up against your palate. Okay, and all we're going to do is breathe long and deep. Your eyes on this third eye point right here. But really the key to this is you're watching your breath, but you want to perceive your heartbeat right at those fingertips touching. Okay, inhale and exhale. And normally you would keep your eyes shut and bring your attention within and spend a few minutes experiencing the meditation for yourself. It's the best meditation I know for developing your God-given and natural sense of intuition that you were born with. And that's been very, very good to me. So I share that gift with you. I thank you for spending time with me and Satnam. Because of my difficulties technically here, I'm not able to take your questions live either by voice or by text. But feel free to write me. And I typed it in there. I don't know if it's actually going to show on your screen. So I've been a little handicapped here. But whether it shows there or not, you can get in touch with me at, I'll give you my email, which is harinam56@gmail.com. So Harinam is HARIN as in Nancy, AM as in man, Harinam56@gmail.com. And if you'd like to be on my mailing list, give that to me. If you would like, I can even send you copies of these, like the written instructions to these two meditations. I'll be happy to, if you ask me for that, I'll send you PDFs of those. And if you have any questions emanating from whatever I shared with you today, I'm more than happy to answer those. So that's my email, harinam56@gmail.com. Right, and I can Twitter. What am I? Twitter at Harinam11, I believe, and then my Facebook here is Harinam Singh Khalsa, which is 4 separate words. What else? Oh, I even have this. I see this in the background. This is, if you're interested, I wrote a book about it a year ago. See this? Look, it's called Khalsa Consciousness. Khalsa Consciousness, and that is about really kind of the consciousness that I've been speaking about here, and really about its source and its basic components. Very short book, but I'd be very honored if you should choose to read it. You can get it at the website, which is www.khalsaconsciousness.com, and Khalsa is KHALSA, and then consciousness.com. And you can get a PDF on there, or you can get a hard copy or like Kindle digital copy on Amazon. So Amazon.com. You can also get the book either digitally or in hard copy. And any other way I could serve you, if you found this lecture of interest and you find reason to want to invite me to teach in your area, or even just to speak with me personally about whatever, because I do personal consultations too, on the usual media. I'm always here to serve you in any way that you may need. So again, best way to reach me is my email, harinam56@gmail.com. God bless you, and all the best going forward. Stay healthy, and we need you, and the world needs you very much right now. This is a time that's the most valuable commodity right now in the world is the thing that's most, because it's the thing most rare is wisdom. And I trust that you choose to dedicate your life to being one of the wise ones. So, love you much. God bless, and Satnam.